everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of myth busting. We're going to be taking a look at persistent myths around chocolate and cocoa, and we're going to look behind the scenes and do a little debunking. And so I hope you're going to enjoy what it is you're doing today. You can go into the comments, the live chat on YouTube, or the comments in LinkedIn and Facebook. Let me know if you have questions or comments about what it is that the myths that I have chosen to take a look at today, and also suggest some ideas for myths that you might want me to take a look at in a future episode. And before I jump into today's episode, a couple of points about housekeeping. The first one of which is that you can't see it, but I've changed my setup here. And I've moved my second monitor, and it's now above me rather than to my side. And so there are some adjustments that I need to make, but what you'll do is you'll see me looking, if you're a regular watcher of these episodes, you'll see me looking in a different place, and that's the reason why I'm looking in a different place, right? And I will be making some changes over the course of the next little while to address eyesight and eyeline and other kinds of issues that I just noticed before I got onto this episode. So we'll figure that out. I also want to remind everybody that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. This is the homepage of the Chocolate Life right now. And if you're not a member, you can click on the join button. That join button is up in the upper right-hand corner, and you can become a member of the Chocolate Life. There is always a free membership level, but there are premium membership levels starting as little as $5 a month, as well as a new lifetime membership, which I'll talk to you about a little more. And I can't go on any further without saying that I need to give thanks to all of the members of the Chocolate Life, premium members at every single level. You are the ones who make all of this possible. And with that, what I want to do is let's get started with today's episode. So for every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, I put together a post, and this is the post for today's episode. Now, this is where it's going to get a little crazy for me, because I have got years of moving off to the right of my screen and looking, and that's the way I move my mouse, and now I'm looking up. So if I get lost, that's why I'm getting lost. So this is the post for today's episode, and just for fun, I wanted to show you, this is the original image that I started off with. I try to go and find images which are somehow thematically related to what it is that I'm doing, so they make an emotional connection. And I thought myth busting, I thought something that was, back in the age of Greek or Roman mythology could be pretty cool. And here is something having to do with a snake on a shield, and I thought that was pretty cool. And so I asked Gemini to go and re-render the that's interesting, to re-render. There we go. I'm looking at it in the wrong screen. Again, give me a little bit of time. It's going to take me a little time to get used to this. I asked it to re-render the shield, re-render the snake with a cocoa pod in its mouth, a cacao pod in its mouth. And I thought it might be interesting. Is cacao the original forbidden fruit or something like that? But I thought persistent myths, it would be a pretty fun way to go, pretty fun way to start this particular episode. So with that, all right. Before I begin, what I really want to do is I also want to point out that June 12th is, let me reload this because I haven't reloaded it. June 12th is UN World Day Against Child Labor. So for everybody who is interested in the topic of illegal labor in the cocoa and chocolate supply chain, these are going to be issues that I am going to be following up with over the course of the next several months. One of the reasons why is that September 19th represents the enactment, the signing into law of the Harkin-Engel Protocol. And I am working with Terry Collingsworth, who's a friend of the channel, who is at International Rights Advocates. And we're going to be working to do something special around the 19th of September to quote unquote, well, celebrate is the wrong word, to honor to memorialize the 25th anniversary of the signing into law of the Harkin Engle Protocol. Coincidentally, it's also the 25th anniversary of the Chocolate Life. All right, with all that out of the way. So if you're a regular at the Chocolate Life and you're regular to these episodes, you know that I spend quite a bit of my time trying to debunk stuff that you'll find on the internet. Most recently, 2 episodes devoted to Lane Kilpatrick. And what I wanted to do here was to talk about some of the persistent, I'm going to call them myths, which show up over and over again on social media, whether it's Facebook or Reddit or X or Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok, whatever it is. I mean, what I find is that all of those sites are echo chambers that will amplify bad takes until they take on lives of their own. And I think of all of those things as fitting into a class of topics covered by something called Brandolini's law, which I have mentioned before, which is the amount of energy needed to refute BS is an order of magnitude greater than the amount of effort required to produce it in the first place, right? So I'm going to do my best to refute some claims, but more importantly, give you tools that you can use when you encounter them yourself. Information that you can use, or if you want to, bookmark today's post and you can point people to it. A couple of things before we begin. Number one, the first 4 claims I make, I'm going to refute, I downloaded images from Pinterest for them. And one of the reasons why is that this episode was inspired by an email I got from Pinterest saying cacao versus cocoa and with some images in it. And I said, cacao versus cocoa, that's something I've been thinking about for a long time. It's something that I deal with on a regular basis. So I'm going to say it's not always possible to understand what the source of these images is. And so I didn't do a good job looking for the sources for things. It just took too long, right? For fun, as it says here, I also asked ChatGPT and an instant of ChatGPT that isn't trained on me, right? So I've got, I use ChatGPT in a browser called Dia, and there's a lot of personalization information, including history. And so I went to a different instance of ChatGPT and I said, what are common myths around chocolate and cocoa that you'll find in social media? And much of this list is taken from a list of myths that ChatGPT chose, not because I believe that ChatGPT is a good source, but it became a quick way to be able to do sort of a top line nod to things. I spent more time doing the research on debunking them than I did in discovering what they were in the first place, right? I'm not going to go into the topic in this episode around how many varieties of cocoa there are, how many varieties of cacao they are. Typically Trinitario, Forastero, and Criollo in reverse order. I did an episode 191, where I talked about the origins of Criollo. I'm not going to go into that today, so you can go there. The myth is that there are only 3 varieties of cocoa, and it turns out that that's not the case. There are 2 big structure groups, right? One called Forastero, one called Criollo, and Trinitarios fit within the Forastero structure group as hybrids. So it's important to understand what those are, but I'm not going to go into it today. All right. So the first myth that we're going to take a look at is that there's a fundamental difference between cacao versus cocoa. And these 3 images, I say, are from Pinterest. And let's go take a look. So what we have is a pile of cocoa powder on the left and a pile of cocoa powder. We have a pile of cacao powder on the left and a pile of cocoa powder on the right. And the first thing it says under the pile of cacao powder is that it is non-processed, which is not true. If it's in powder stage, it's processed. No, I mean, the beans had to be cracked and winnowed. Then they had to be converted to a paste, unless they're going through an expeller press. Then they went into a hydraulic press, and the fat was separated from the non-fat solids. The non-fat solids were then ground into a powder. So the fact that they call cacao non-processed as opposed to very processed is different. There's also this thing called cold processed at low temperatures versus heated to high temps. So it turns out that when you make cacao powder, when you are removing the fat from the paste so that you get the non-fat solids and the fat, that the pressure generates an enormous amount of heat. And you can add heat in it to make the process efficient. This is especially true if you want to get to a low fat, a 10% cocoa powder. And so this processed at low temps may not be true. Number one, it doesn't say what the low temp is, right? And if you do process without any added heat, the process is extremely inefficient, right? The third one, it says the difference between cacao and cocoa is that there are no additives, whereas cocoa always contains alkalizing agents. That's not true. A cocoa powder can be natural, right, which is what we're looking at up here, right, in terms of the color, or it can be alkalized. But cocoa doesn't always mean that the process is alkalized. Cacao is bursting with nutrients. I would say it's higher in nutrient value. Little to no nutrients. There is a difference between natural cocoa powder and alkalized cocoa powder. So if this is a picture of alkalized cocoa, then much, much lower in nutrients. The answer is absolutely correct. And we're talking primarily about polyphenols, flavonols in general. But dark, robust chocolate taste. Again, that depends. Because cacao powder is not alkalized, it is often more acidic, right, and fruitier. And just because it is not alkalized doesn't mean that it has a more robust chocolate taste. It could, in fact, be very, very, very fruity and very, very acidic. And it says here, less bitter due to extra processing. This is actually true. One of the things that happens with the alkalization, especially, is that it reduces the acidity and it reduces the bitter compounds. But this particular image is making very broad stroke claims that turned out not to be true, right? Right? So I want to recognize that. I also want to get a quick shout out to Mike King at Encore Coffee and Chocolate in Kansas City, Missouri. Hey, Mike, I hope everything's going great there. I mean, hopefully tornadoes haven't been too bad where you are in the world. I understand there's been some really bad weather in the Midwest. Hope you and yours are all doing well and are safe. I suppose, however, if you've got to go into a tornado shelter, that having a lot of chocolate and a lot of coffee is not a bad way to spend the time, right? Anyway, having said that, so the second image we've got here, again, is cacao versus cocoa. And here what we're doing is we're comparing cacao nibs with cocoa powder. And so that's not a one-to-one comparison. We just need to be aware of that. But it says here, cacao beans are dried, fermented, and heated, right? So first it says they're dried first and then they're fermented, which is not the way this works, right? Then they are heated at a low temperature. The heat separates the fatty part of the bean from the rest. No. Right? Now, it used to be, and this is before the development of the hydraulic butter press in the patenting of it in 1828 by the Van Houten family, is that there was something called the Broma process. And what you did is you put the cocoa mass into a bag and you hung it in a warm place, and the cocoa fat would drip very, very slowly through the mesh, like cheesecloth, right? And very inefficient, very, very slow. And so maybe that's right. But pros, right? So if you have cacao nibs, which have not been alkalized, because it's possible to alkalize nibs, that there are more polyphenols, more flavonols, more antioxidants in general. That's may be true, but how much the difference is depends upon whether alkalization happens or not, right? Cacao nibs are a great chocolate chip replacement in some recipes, perhaps, but they are very different things because they don't have added sugar with them and they don't have added fat. And cocoa butter can be used as a moisturizer. This is a complete non sequitur. A con is that cacao is not as sweet as cocoa. And so here's a fundamental misunderstanding. What they're doing is they're conflating cocoa with like, Swiss Miss hot chocolate drinks, hot cocoa mix, and those are cocoa powder and a mix which is designed to make a hot beverage, sweetened beverage. These are two entirely different things. So there's this basic conflation here. So cocoa is harvested the same way as cacao, but heated at a high temperature. The final product is much sweeter than cacao. And the answer is, here's where we understand the conflation. This person has said there's a difference between cacao nibs and hot chocolate powder mix and hot cocoa powder mix. And the answer is absolutely correct, but these things are not directly comparable. It's sweeter tasting. Well, yeah, right? Because cocoa powder on its own is usually fairly bitter. It's better for baking. That's weird. I mean, I might want an unalkalized cocoa powder so that I can do the acid react with the base, to make something rise. It's not always the case that it's better for baking. You need to make sure that you've got the recipe correct. But I wouldn't use a hot chocolate mix, a hot cocoa powdered mix in a little bag or a scoop, right? And use it for baking. So again, whoever put this together, and by the way, it's paleo hacks, as it looks like. You know, you can't believe what you read on the internet. All right, is the thing here. More processed, decreasing antioxidants and nutrients. So here again is this conflation between natural and alkalized cocoa powders, right? If you have an unalkalized, a natural cocoa powder, it turns out that the nutrient content, the antioxidants, is going to be less, perhaps, than something which was than the cocoa paste from which it is derived, but it's not a straight line relationship whatsoever. And you can't make a blanket claim. And here's an important thing to consider is that to some extent, it doesn't matter what you put in your mouth. It matters what your body metabolizes, right? And so it may be that, it may be that some forms of processing make some nutrients more bioavailable. And just saying less processed is better for you is not a statement that you can make. And also, there's the point at some point when you have too much of something, your body starts excreting it. And so it may be that just because it's higher doesn't automatically mean that it's better. So something to keep in mind. The third one here, cacao versus cocoa, right? So there's not a one-to-one correspondence here, but cacao, this is a bad LLM generated image over here. Cacao aids in weight loss. No, necessarily. Cocoa causes weight gain, right? Well, I think that they're, again, conflating. Cocoa always has sugar in it. So, but when we think about cacao powder, so we have a minimally processed cacao paste or cacao powder versus a highly processed or more processed. So again, they're conflating things which shouldn't be conflated. Cacao promotes healthy skin, low levels of cacao. Again, I don't understand that. High antioxidants, mood enhancing, high in vitamins and minerals, improved blade function, promotes blood circulation, takes headaches away. That's interesting because it's one of the myths that I will discuss is that many people believe that cacao is responsible for causing migraines. So I don't understand why cacao takes headaches away. Increases blood sugar, low in nutrients, often contains sugar and artificial flavors. Again, here we're conflating a drink mix, a beverage mix, as opposed with straight cocoa powder. So, right, these are the things to look at when people say cacao, right, and cocoa are different things. It may be that in their minds, one of the things they're doing is they're conflating two very, very, very different products. All right, let's go. Myth, white chocolate isn't really chocolate. I've covered this before on the Chocolate Life many, many times. It shows up. Here's what I want to point you with. Before I get to the images from Pinterest, is that this document from the Code of Federal Regulations, this is 21 CFR. So this refers to 21 CFR Part 163, which is the part of the Code of Federal Regulations, which contain the standards of identity for chocolate. This document is dated 2002, right? And what it says is the FDA is establishing a standard of identity for white chocolate. And it is the final rule, right? And it is 2002, right? So there, right? October 2002. So in the Federal Registry in 1997, so it took 5 years for the chocolate industry, led by the Hershey Company and the Chocolate Manufacturers Association, to say, what we would like you to do, we, the industry, would like you to create a formal standard of identity for white chocolate, because there isn't one. And the FDA agreed. The FDA agreed that white chocolate, which had been introduced in the 1930s, needed a formal standard of identity. And there were a couple of things they point out, one of which is that they needed to ensure, I didn't highlight it here, that it would reduce economic deception by promoting honesty and fair dealing, increase the availability of products containing white chocolate by eliminating the requirement that firms receive temporary marketing permits. So there were lots of good reasons to move from this informal system of temporary marketing permits to a formal standard of identity. And so what you can point out to anybody who says white chocolate isn't really chocolate, I have to say I'm not a fan of Ben Shapiro or any of the hosts that are on the Daily Wire. But one of the things that Ben Shapiro said is facts don't care about your feelings. And this particular case, the fact is that in the United States and in the UK and in the EU and many other, most other countries in the world, there is a legal definition for what white chocolate is. You may think that white chocolate isn't chocolate because it doesn't have non-fat cocoa solids, the brown stuff. The fact is, if you go read this post from the FDA, that there's an explicit recognition that one of the things that the standard of identity does is it says there must be a minimum amount of cocoa-derived fat in order to be called white chocolate. So there is a direct connection that is made here. Facts don't care about your feelings. So white chocolate isn't really chocolate. It's really just a mixture of sugar, vanilla, lecithin, and cocoa butter. Well, yeah, right? But not all white chocolates have lecithin in it. They're going to have sugar and milk and cocoa butter. They are in the definition. They have to be there in minimum and maximum amounts. But this is Magna Food Service, food fact. Here's somebody declaring it to be a fact. Here we are. I mean, 1997 is when the petition was made. It was enacted in 2002 with a voluntary regime. You could start immediately adhering to the definition in October of 2002, but it went into effect January 1, 2004, right? So here we are almost 22 and a half years later. This is a persistent myth about chocolate. The white chocolate isn't really chocolate. So white chocolate isn't real. Myth that white chocolate is real chocolate, sort of inverting things. Nope, it's made from cocoa butter, not cocoa beans. Complete misunderstanding with where does cocoa butter come from, right? So they're talking about it doesn't include the non-fat cocoa solids, but, right, the FDA says we got that covered, right? As long as it has the minimum amount of cocoa-derived fat, and in the United States, the only fat can be cocoa butter, if you want to call it chocolate, right? This is absolutely wrong. And then the third one, right? Just a reminder that white chocolate is not chocolate, as in fact made of lies. And I am sure that this is a meme. This is in meme-able format, really. I'm sure that this is one that gets shared around a lot. And it turns out that is in fact absolutely incorrect. So if anybody comes up to you and says white chocolate isn't really chocolate, you can say that. Let's go to the Code of Federal Regulations, and here you are, right? You can say that this is in fact, there is legal definition for it. And I took off the link to ECFR 21.163. I'll put it back here. White chocolate SOI, standard of identity. That's sort of, I saw, and I wrote it, so I'm confused. So I'll clear that up after the post. But I will also put the link to the ECFR link where you have what white chocolate is and what white chocolate isn't. But now you can say, I'm sorry, you're wrong, right? If anybody says. This next one talks about this whole nature of LLMs, right? And whether or not you can trust LLMs. And here is a guy. The first two images, I chose these first two because they were published by the same person, Amit Kumar. And number one is the LLM doesn't understand the process of chocolate making. And here are two images from the same people. I don't know if from the same person. I don't know if they're generated by the same LLM. They might or might not be, but they get the chocolate making process wrong in different ways. And this is where having some subject matter expertise, so that what you can do is you can look at the output of the LLM and you can go, I'm sorry, this is wrong. I have spent a lot of time training my LLMs on me, right? And on documents that are generally considered to be the industry and scientific consensus about truth claims around chocolate. Again, you know, this does provide me with a little more confidence about what it is that I'm doing, and how I go about working with the outputs of the prompts that I ask LLMs. Uh, but you know, most people don't have that expertise. So let's go take a look at the first image. I don't know if you, let me zoom it up a little bit. So it says that the chocolate making process, first I harvest, right? And harvesting, ripe cocoa pods are harvested from cocoa trees. Pods are cracked open to extract the beans. Yay, got that right. But then we go to fermenting, right? And we have two arrows from harvesting, right? This harvesting arrow here goes to drying, and this arrow goes to fermenting. And okay, it's not incorrect, it's not complete. So harvested beans can go straight to drying, or what they can do is they can go straight to fermenting. And here's where the crazy part of this is. This appears to be a fermentation box, and this appears to be a drying pad, but I'm kind of wondering. So it's weird. The LLM clearly doesn't understand, right, what's going on here. And there's this confusion, harvesting to drying, harvesting to fermenting. There's no fermenting to arrow to go from fermenting to drying. All right. Then we got this weird thing that roasting is where I'm not, but we have this machine goes to this machine. This looks like it might be a roaster, right? I'm sort of looking because that looks like it might be a cooling tray, right? And that looks like it might be a drum, but the drum's in the wrong orientation. And the reason why I say it might be a roaster is because beans are coming out of here, or not paste is coming out of here, and there's no way pods would be here. So I'm just saying. And then I've got grinding. Grinding appears to be related to this, and then conching. And I go from conching to molding and cooling. So grinding, the mixture is refined and aerated in a conching machine. Refiners and conches are not the same thing. So you'd refine in something and then you'd conch in something else. Although in a universal, you would grind, refine, pre-grind, grind, refine, and conch in the same machine. This is not a universal. This looks like a combination of some kind of roll mill with something. I'm not entirely sure where it is, what it is, but it is a Frankenstein machine. Rube Goldberg, maybe better. Maybe it's a Rube Goldberg machine, right? Molding and cooling. And I'm going, this is not what tempering machines look like at all. This looks like it's some mashup of a horizontal hydraulic cocoa butter press. I'm not entirely sure. And, here's the arrow. I go from conching into this machine, but I go from here to there, right? This arrow goes from finished product to molding and cooling, right? So I'm sorry, Amit, you obviously don't know enough about the process of making chocolate to be able to look at what the LLM has given you and be able to go, it's wrong. Now, I have seen on LinkedIn people who really know their stuff, right? People who have the background and have the history, will take the output of an LLM, an image generated by LLM, and publish it and not catch just real obvious mistakes. Um, you have to be very careful when you do get the output of an LLM that you actually take a look at it very, very closely. As I say, here's this guy, Amit Kumar. All I know is he publishes images on Pinterest. Don't know his background, don't know where in the world he is located. And he published another image about the chocolate making process. So it's hard to remember, go back and forth, right, about what these are. But there are eight steps: harvesting, fermenting, drying, roasting, grinding, conching. Oh gosh, I never noticed this before. It's missing a step 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Okay. Somebody's not paying attention. I wasn't paying close enough attention until I just noticed this just now. But there are 7 steps, 7 or 8 steps. All right, let's go to the next one. I have 8 steps again. This time I've got a step 6, so yay. So same process. I go to harvesting. Number 1, harvesting straight to drying. So missing the fermenting step in this one, although 1, harvesting, 2, drying, fermenting is here, but it's not a step. Sort of curious about what that is. Okay, right? It's there, but it's not there for some reason. And fermenting and drying are equally important. So I don't know why fermenting is not highlighted, especially because it was in the previous image. So I go from drying to roasting, right? Roasted and cracked to remove shells. I have a roaster. I don't have a cracker and winnower. What is this white stuff? Oh, that cocoa butter. Okay. Nibs are ground into a cocoa mass. The cocoa mass is refined and cottage. So are nibs the output of this or nibs the input of this? Nibs are not entirely sure. It's confusing to me. I go from 4, right? 5 ingredients are blended together, then mixed to achieve the desired taste, and then it's tempered. And this is backwards. Now, depending upon what kind of refining step, this grinding refining step, for example, if I'm using a 5-roll mill or a roll mill in general, I am going to have all of my ingredients mixed together before I run them through the roll mill. If I have a universal, everything is going to be done in the universal. If I've got a ball mill, I'm going to do some pre-refining and everything's going to be done in the ball mill. So this mixing is not a step 5. It would happen sort of before step 4. They're backwards. So again, this step 5 is mixing from the previous image, and it's the same guy, Amit Kumar. So I go from tempering. Yeah, chocolate is tempered for shine and smash. And we have smooth chocolate, not smooth chocolate. Again, not paying attention. And LLMs are notoriously bad about being rendering text. And so often one of the ways you can tell that an image has been rendered with an LLM is because the text is really, 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 really bad. Molding, chocolate is poured into molds, cools and solidifies, and then bars are wrapped and packed. And so, between this image and the previous image, we've got a more or less complete. But here's this person and 2 images which have completely different descriptions of the process. So LLMs don't know how to make chocolate. The journey of chocolate from bean to bar. This is somebody else that's new, a different person. This is also LLM generated. The way you can tell it's LLM generated is take a look at the way the cocoa pod, the open pod is rendered. So number 1, cocoa farming. Hey, first time anybody has mentioned farming per se, right? Cocoa trees thrive in tropical regions. It's the only place they grow with warm climate, shade, and rich soil. Interestingly enough, often not very rich soil, but that's another discussion. The ripe pods are opened and the beans are removed from the pulp. That's not true. The beans are not removed from the pulp. The beans are removed from the pod with the pulp intact because it is the pulp that ferments. So we're not removing the beans from the pulp at this point. Beans are fermented in boxes or piles. Um, there are other trays would be another form of fermentation. Bags is another form of fermentation. So it's overly specific. I go from fermentation directly to roasting. There's no drying step. I'm not going to roast wet beans. So it's lost a step entirely. Grinding. The roasted beans are ground into thick paste called liquor. That happens. We add ingredients, then we refine it. Yes, absolutely. And it forgot tempering. So there's missing a tempering step, right? So, okay. So this is an image that's going around the internet on Pinterest. It's shared many, many times. And the lesson you need to learn from this is LLMs don't know how to make chocolate. So if you are going to use an image, ChatGPT, Gemini, any LLM, Stable Diffusion, I suppose, to generate any image, talking about how chocolate is made, what you need to do is you need to feed into it a better set of steps and text for the prompts. This one is incomplete. It forgot the drying stage between fermentation and roasting, and it forgot tempering. So chocolate is poured into molds, cooled, and hardened into bars, right? So it forgot tempering. So of the 8 steps, there should have been 10. All right. So that's a myth. LLMs know how to make chocolate. There are thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of these images out there, Pinterest, on social media, everywhere, right? And you can't trust them. You have to look at them and you have to examine them and you have to go, okay, what the heck is going on here, right? So, So the next one, types of chocolate. So types of chocolate is really, really interesting to me. Let me join. So I've got a question. Linkra, Matt from Sierra Leone, so Foss from Sierra, can you please send me this presentation? So number one, Linkra, it's never a good idea to put your email address into a public comment. This is now going to exist on Facebook forever, and I can't delete it. And it's in this live stream forever. I'm on Facebook. What you could do is you could DM me. This isn't a presentation per se, right? And so the video will be available. You can go to, let me make sure I'm up here. You can go to this link on YouTube. Here it is. You can go on this link to YouTube, and it's permanently archived here on YouTube. So you can go watch this on YouTube. If you have the ability to, what you can do is you can get the transcript and you can edit the transcript. If you wanted to, you could take screenshots, right? And then you could time the screenshots to the text. This is, I am doing this live, right? So there is no presentation per se, but you have the ability to do whatever you want with the video that will be on YouTube within minutes after the live stream is done, right? If you have problems with that, I may be able to help you, because what I could do is I might be able to find a way to feed the entire video with a script into an LLM that would generate a presentation. I need to go look, and if maybe it's worthwhile. I don't know the answer to that question, but this is something that you can do. All right. And this information is out there, and I'm not asserting any kind of copyright control that would keep you from doing that. So, right, types of chocolate. I'm going to say this is of interest to me because I think that one of the challenges that we face with chocolate awards programs is that every single one of them has a different schema. So, is single origin chocolate above 80% made in a producing country a type of chocolate? Yes or no, right? And so thinking about organizing types of chocolate and styles of chocolate is something that I think about on a regular basis. It makes me happy. It makes me feel good to do these things. And I will continue to do that. But this notion, here's CFR. I do have the link down here. I don't have it up in white chocolate. So according to the Code of Federal Regulations, these links are wrong. So let's go here. There are 20 types of chocolate. So dark chocolate, legally, not a type of chocolate. colloquially, I agree with you. Dark chocolate is a type of chocolate. Milk chocolate, white chocolate, those are both types of chocolate. They're in the standards of identity, right? So if I go to ECFR 21.163, I will find milk chocolate and white chocolate as types of chocolate. Ruby chocolate is not a type of chocolate. It's not a type of chocolate, right? The ruby chocolate recipe that we were familiar with is basically a white chocolate recipe. And what they're doing is they're using cocoa beans, which are purple, to make it, right? But it's not a new type of chocolate. Barry Callebaut tried to say it's the new type of chocolate. The recipe is a white chocolate recipe, and it follows all the classic requirements of a white chocolate recipe. And there are custom versions of it made for bigger companies that are different recipes. But if you go out and get R1, right, it's white chocolate. And it just happens to be pink because it's made with beans that were processed to make sure that the purple color is retained. So, and no. So bittersweet chocolate and semi-sweet chocolate, these both fit within the definition, which is in ECFR 21.163 for what we call sweet chocolate. There is no legal definition between bittersweet chocolate, bittersweet, and semi-sweet chocolate. And dark chocolate colloquially fits into the sweet chocolate category. We would say that the difference here is that dark chocolate would contain no dairy products whatsoever, whereas the standard of identity for sweet chocolate says, oh, you can have butter oil, for example, and you can have whey protein isolates. I believe that there are other kinds of dairy products that can be in both bittersweet and semi-sweet chocolate. So couverture chocolate is not a type of chocolate; it's a style of chocolate. It can. So the reason why is that couverture can be either dark milk, white, sweet, semi-sweet. I could make a ruby couverture, right? And the difference of a couverture is that it tends to have a higher cocoa butter content and or fluidity, right? And that's what makes it a style, but it would be a style that applies to all of these different kinds of chocolate. So it's not a type of chocolate, right? Unsweetened chocolate. So unsweetened chocolate, cocoa liquor, right? This is powder, right? So it's not paste. And so that's not the thing. Gianduja is, again, I can make a gianduja with milk chocolate. I can make a gianduja with white chocolate. I can make a gianduja with bittersweet or semi-sweet chocolate. So gianduja chocolate is a style, not a type. Vegan chocolate is a style, not a type. Raw chocolate is a style, not a type. So it has to do with temperature and processing. So I theoretically I could have a raw vegan milk chocolate, not out. So depending upon how the milk is processed. So I could have a non-dairy. I'm just saying that raw chocolate is a type of chocolate. Baking chocolate is a type of. I could have a dark chocolate baking chocolate. I could have milk chocolate chips, white chocolate chips, ruby. Ruby chocolate chips are a challenge because that color is not fast at high temperatures. So if you bake ruby chocolate, at least the original formulations, I don't know if they fixed it, but it would turn gray very, very quickly. It was really, really unappetizing. Drinking chocolate. So I could have a semi-sweet, a bittersweet. I could have a very sweet. I could make a drinking chocolate with milk chocolate. I could make a drinking chocolate. I could make a ruby chocolate drinking chocolate. It's a style. Compound chocolate. So compound is, again, a compound is anything that's not made with cocoa butter, but I could make a dark chocolate compound and a milk chocolate compound and a white chocolate compound. Theoretically, I could make a ruby compound. Single origin chocolate, again, it's a style, right? Not a type. Flavored chocolate, again, it's a style. I could have flavored milk, flavored white, flavored dark. What I'm getting here is I want you to get this idea about, there is a hierarchy. And if you have a term which can be applied across multiple items, it's probably a style, not a type. And I'm going over and over and over again to be able to drive this point home. Organic chocolate, same thing. I have organic dark, organic milk. It's a style, not a type. Sugar-free chocolate, a style, not a type. Filled chocolate, a style, not a type. Caramel chocolate, a style, not a type. And so just really, really great. And by the way, this also works. I found this morning on LinkedIn in my feed, types of sugar candy, right? So we got the same problem here. It's not just a myth about chocolate, it's a myth about other things. Hard candy, gummy candy, jelly candy. So I would look at these fruit gels up here. So this is a fruit orange. This is a so fruit slices, that's a jelly candy, not a gummy candy, right? Uh, the overlap here, what is the technical differences between a jelly and a gummy? There are, by the way, but this this differentiation makes no sense to me. Soft and jiggly made with fruit juice or gelatin. Well, jelly beans aren't soft and jiggly, right? So I'm just saying. All right. Lollipops. So lollipops and candy canes are types of hard candy, and hard candy is here. So lollipops, again, hard candy is a type, right? But lollipops and candy canes are styles. Rock candy is a style, right? Right. Many sour candies fit into the gummy or jelly category, right? But these are hard to differentiate. Taffy and chewy are related to each other as types of candy. Candy nuggets, I don't understand what this is. Candy buttons, sugar drops, candy beads, small bite-sized sugar candies. And so again, this is a style of maybe a hard candy or something else. Chocolate candy, again, this is just a candy that has chocolate as an ingredient. So is it a type of candy? Maybe, right? So these are sugar candy. So these are types of sugar candy. So chocolate candy, I don't think as a type of sugar candy. It fits into the types of chocolate as a style. But it again, I'm just, gaming this through live for the first time as I do this. Benefits, tips for enjoying sugar candy. The idea here is that this is what is very, very common on the internet. It gets shared around, and the people who are putting this together are putting together clickbait listicles. And I don't know that this is prepared by an LLM. These appear to be all photos, so it may be hand edited. But again, there are some real problems here for that. I just thought it was, fun to go take a look at that. So we have types of chocolate. Here's another list: types of chocolate. Again, completely confused. Chocolate chips is a shape of chocolate. Chocolate ball. Valentine's Day candy is a type of Valentine's Day chocolate is a type of chocolate. A chocolate tray is a type of chocolate. Dry fruit chocolate, well, that's an example of dipped or enrobed, which in a bunch of things. This toffee chocolate, this is an enrobed toffee, right? So chocolate biscuits, this is enrobed, but only on one side. Truffles or something you might find in a Valentine's Day chocolate box. I mean, these things make absolutely no sense, but these are the sorts of things that are being passed around. And again, what I want you to consider here as you think about this in terms of types and styles is that if an attribute like, right, enrobing can be applied to a bunch of different things, then it represents a style, not a type. And that's where I want to go here. Again, a quick guide to chocolate types. Raw chocolate. Well, raw chocolate is not a type of chocolate, it's a style of chocolate. And raw chocolate is good for melting and baking, but not eating. So I don't know what they're talking about for raw, what they mean by raw here. Let me get this a bit bigger. All right. Dark chocolate is good for melting, baking, and eating, but dark milk chocolate is not good for melting or baking. Who said that white chocolate and milk chocolate are not good for, right, or those things? It says ruby chocolate is good for baking. Absolutely not. It will lose its color very quickly. It will turn gray and appetizing. Chocolate baking chips. How many people don't eat them? Candy melts. I would agree that candy melts aren't great for eating, but I'm sure that there are people who do. Good for melting. Not sure they're good for baking. Again, gianduja chocolate. Good for melting. Good for baking. I would say it's for eating. Couverture chocolate. I mean, a lot of the chocolate bars that you eat right now are technically couverture because of the fat content. Compound chocolate, I would say it's not good for melting, not good for baking, not good for eating, right? I don't think it I understand why it exists. I am not a fan of it. So the types of chocolate. Let's That's it. So more questions, right? So these were just 4 myths that happened to come up as a result of my taking a look at an email from Pinterest around cacao versus cocoa. And as I was looking for images around cacao versus cocoa, I came across these, white chocolate isn't really chocolate images. And then I came across these images about how chocolate is made. And then I came across these images around the types of chocolate. So this was just a sort of stream of conscious exploration about how social media, Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, uh, Threads, all of these platforms there are people who have, for some reason, found themselves to be influencers in one form or another. They need to feed the algorithm. I think a lot of this stuff is published because if you don't feed the algorithm with clickbaity stuff that generates engagement, you're never going to be seen. And that's what I think the motive, that's what I imagine the motivation for a lot of this stuff is. It's just we got to pump out content. We got to pump out. Otherwise, right? We won't get the engagement we need. Anyway, so the rest of the topics, I'm going to go through them very quickly, except for the final one. Right, were recommended by ChatGPT as myths. So I picked them, and then I used an LLM that was trained on me to go do some research. So, so the first one is that chocolate causes acne. This one is all over the place. If you do a quick search on a search engine, so go to Google, go to DuckDuckGo, and do chocolate causes acne, and just take a look at the number of search results. There are a lot of search results where people say chocolate causes acne. And so one of the things that I did, right? And it turns out that's not true. Chocolate does not cause acne. What it might do, right, is that if you have a skin type in which you are predisposed to having acne, then your acne symptoms will be greater than if you didn't consume chocolate, right? So acne prone people, that's here. However, there is evidence that acne prone people, right, that in acne prone people, relatively high daily consumption of chocolate can modestly worsen existing acne lesions. However, if you are not prone to acne, eating chocolate is not going to cause acne. So number one, right? There is a link to a study on PubMed, Diet and Acne, a systematic review. If you want to go and look at it, I've got the receipts. Number two, chocolate causes cavities, right? So the answer is a little bit more nuanced in this particular case. So number one is that, right, that the frequency and clearance time of sugars are key. Sticky solids and starches with long clearance time are especially cariogenic, which means that if you consume something, it sticks to your teeth, it remains there, it's high in sugar, it reduces the pH below 5.5, right? That is going to promote cavities, cariogenic, right? Right. And again, the classification of cariogenic versus non-cariogenic foods is based largely on how long fermentable carbs remain in the mouth. I've got a source here. I need to find the link. It was either not found or behind a paywall. I don't remember why I didn't include here. I need to go find it. However, again, the TLDR in this is chocolate is, if anything, on the less harmful end of the confectionery spectrum and may even contribute anti-cariogenic compounds. So polyphenols are known to have antimicrobial, anti-adhesive, and anti-glucan properties, and theobromine, in combination with calcium and phosphate, can promote enamel hardening and remineralization in some studies. So chocolate also clears out of your mouth quickly. A good chocolate will clear out of your mouth quickly and cleanly. If the chocolate is sticky in your mouth, it may have a non-cocoa butter fat or something else like caramel might have been mixed into it. But a good chocolate itself that clears out of your mouth may in fact not only not promote cavities, but it could reduce cavity formation. If you're using baking powder, right, as part of a toothbrush, put a little cocoa powder in there without sugar. Putting a little cocoa powder in with a little baking powder might not be a bad thing, right? I do it every once in a while. It's not particularly tasty, so I don't do it for very long, but every once in a while I do. All right. Next myth. Chocolate triggers migraines in most people. And you may remember that one of the cacao versus cocoa differences that was up here, right, is that coffee triggers migraines. Yep, up here. Chocolate takes headaches away, right? And the myth on this is that chocolate triggers migraines. And again, according to this study, which I've linked to, it's in the National Library of Medicine, To Eat or Not to Eat, a review of the relationship between chocolate and migraine. What we'll see is that chocolate does not cause migraines, right? It is a self-identified trigger of migraines, but it may be that the craving for chocolate is a prodrome, which is a early pre-symptomatic phase. Before you have the migraine symptoms, there is a craving for chocolate. And the prodrome, that craving for chocolate, you have some, and right, it doesn't trigger the migraine. It's that craving for chocolate is a symptom that you're in the early stages of migraine onset. So this is what the TLDR on this is going to be. Control data does not support a robust causal link, and chocolate cravings may be part of the prodrome rather than the cause, right? And if you want to know more, you can link to it. Another one is that people believe that chocolate is addictive. And when they say addictive, they mean addictive like heroin is addictive, or methamphetamines are addictive, things like that. Morphine is addictive. And the answer to that question is not, right? Chocolate is not chemically addictive, right? So cacao/cocoa, in a nod to the previous set of things, does contain mild psychoactive compounds, which, especially when combined with sugar and fat, can strongly engage the brain's reward circuitry, leading to cravings, which can spiral out of control, right? You put some in, the chocolate is designed to be moreish, it leaves your mouth, you take another piece, it leaves your mouth, you take another piece, right? So clinical and research communities do not classify chocolate itself as chemically addictive like a drug. There is no nicotine or morphine-like dependence, and there is no recognized chocolate use disorder. Which I love this phrase, chocolate use disorder. It's like, substance abuse, alcohol use disorder. I just love the idea of a chocolate use disorder, in a sort of twisted, humorous kind of way. If I'm eating chocolate and I'm addicted, quote unquote, addicted to chocolate, is this CUD, C-U-D, what we call chocolate use disorder is called CUD? I just laughed when I saw this. Anyway, and this is coming out of a research report. Anyway, current evidence frames chocolate more accurately as a food that can participate in food-like addiction patterns in vulnerable individuals rather than as an addictive substance in its own right. So the thing to know is that chocolate is not chemically addictive. However, it is true that big chocolate does take advantage of this mild psychoactive compounds combined with fat and sugar, right, to actively pursue what they call the bliss point, which is some combination of fat, sugar, salt, carbohydrates, and texture, the way it melts in your mouth, right, the way it feels as you're eating it, right, is that those are what's likely to be the quote unquote addictive properties. And if you do have a propensity towards addiction-like behaviors, food addiction-like behaviors, and eating disorder already, that chocolate is going to feed into that. But chocolate in and of itself is not addictive. So the final one, which is, this is the one I added, which is I am allergic to chocolate. Right? A lot of people say, I can't eat chocolate, I'm allergic to it. And this is the one of these myths that I'm going to talk about. This is the one where there are some people who have a true allergy to the proteins in cocoa, right, and other substances, but it is really, really rare, right? The everyday claim, I'm allergic to chocolate, is often just self-reported fuzzy shorthand for something else. So, number one, most people who say they are allergic to chocolate are reacting to milk, right? Soy or contaminants or nuts. There's nuts, milk, nuts, soy, or even contaminants in chocolate products, not to cocoa proteins. So you may not be reacting to the cocoa. Maybe there's something in the cocoa. It could be an undisclosed or undeclared ingredient. So number two says that population surveys report somewhere between 0.5% to 0.7% self-reported chocolate cocoa allergy. So the self-reported rate is extremely low, but those rely on questionnaires only and are known to overestimate true food allergies dramatically. So the self-reported instance is very small, right? Less than 1%. And it's all self-reported based on questionnaire responses, right? A 2026 pediatric case report plus literature review in Frontiers in Pediatrics makes the same point. Suspected cocoa allergy is frequently seen in clinical settings or clinic settings, but true IgE, immunoglobulin E mediated cocoa allergy, is rare, with only a few confirmed cases published to date. And this is very, very recent, 2026. And here are two links. So you have a link into PubMed, the National Library of Medicine, True Chocolate and Cocoa Allergy, as well as the, I believe this IgE-mediated cocoa allergy is the Frontiers in Pediatrics posts. So you can go take a look if you want to go and take a look and think about allergies and whether you're truly allergic. So the answer to that question is probably not. Right? And we're right at the hour. We're a little bit over. I want to thank everybody for joining me here today and to remind everyone that this is the 25th anniversary of the now a lifetime membership, which will go to support all the work that I do here on the Chocolate Life. If you're interested in becoming a lifetime member, you can click on this link and there will be go to a page and it will talk about lifetime membership. Yay, there it is. And I am signed into my account. If lifetime membership is a little pricey for you, and I understand that it is for many, many, many people, there's also the join button here. And you can sign up for as little as $0, but monthly memberships now start at, have always started for as little as $5 a month. And once you are a member, this is something new that just got added as a result of the June member newsletter. There is now, I'm logged in. Oh, I'm not logged in. This is Safari. So you can see you can't log in because I'm not logged into the Chocolate Life on Safari. But if I go to the homepage and I click on the newsletter, then one of the things which is new, there are two things new. One of which is you have the ability to share this post. So if you see this button, you can share from within the Chocolate Life without having to leave. But there's also a new give the gift of membership. So if you want to give for Father's Day, for example, a gift of membership, you can give a gift of membership either monthly or annually. You can give a gift of membership in the Chocolate Life. That's brand new as of a couple of days ago, actually. And that's it for this episode. I want to say again, thanks everybody for joining. Thanks for everybody who posted comments into today's episode. And I wish everybody a great weekend. I don't have a post for this coming Tuesday, but I will think of something. I will think of something over the weekend. One of the things that I'm going to be doing this weekend, I'm looking forward to it, is I learned that there was a local chapter of Slow Food here in Prescott. People may not know that the founder of Slow Food, the Slow Food movement, Carlo Petrini, passed away recently. And so there's going to be a picnic in his honor at a park, which is within a few minutes of walking distance from where I am. On Sunday, it's going to be a potluck. And so I'm going to be bringing something, and I'm going to be engaging with the Slow Food community for the first time. I just found out about this. recently. So that's what I'm going to do for the weekend. I hope that you will be doing something wonderful as well. And remember, as I end this episode, as I always do, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Until the next time, everybody, ciao.